Welcome everybody. My name is Millie Bundle and I'm a lecturer here at John Hall in the School of Sport and Exercise Science, and it's my absolute privilege to be able to introduce these two wonderful women to you for the session. So, to my far left, we have Dr. Emma Richardson, who is a postdoctoral research fellow at the University of Worcester with a focus on inclusive sport and exercise research. So prior to that, Emma completed her PhD in disability studies and now has over 30 publications in peer-reviewed journals. And to my left here, we have Rebecca Foster, MBE, who is a principal lecturer of adaptive physical education, also within the School of Sport and Exercise Science at the University of Worcester. Prior to that role, Rebecca was a PE teacher for over 20 years before becoming a teaching fellow at Leeds Beckett. We were just talking about that at a time there. And in 2017, she was awarded an MBE for her services to inclusive sport. So I think it's safe to say we're in good company. Yeah. And I know, for me as a selfish thing, I'm very much looking forward to this session. As I said, we're going through kind of a big revalidation at the moment of programmes, and this is going to be super helpful and interesting for us as well. And everyone.
Well, thank you. And again, I was talking to some colleagues about us being conference fit. I don't know about you, but I don't think I'm conference fit. I'm very impressed to see so many of you here, because I'm sure I would have sauntered off by now. So thank you very, very much for staying, and I hope you do get a lot of value from it. We've spent some time trying to put it together for an audience we didn't really know who or what to expect. So if there's one thing that you take away from it, I hope that will be grand. If you take more, the merrier. But a little bit more about me, to self-indulge myself also, is that I've also done quite a lot of work with deaf sports and deaf Olympics. And it's been really interesting for me over the last couple of days to hear people's journeys within that and how they've applied that into their workforce, really. So I think, again, the volunteering and the passion that I had for that actually has enhanced my role as an academic, because I primarily see myself as a practitioner. So I think that's kind of where sort of my passion comes from. But for today, we are going to be talking about the work that we do at the University of Worcester. So where is Worcester? And I'm sure you probably do know about the source. There is some rivalry with Gloucester because obviously it's a cheese, and you could say they complement each other, but a lot of the students don't actually like saying that. But we're just about an hour's drive from Birmingham, but I'm probably can tell I'm very much a southerner. But can you go to the next slide and then we'll go back? So what I want you to consider today, because we were tasked with a workshop, again, on a Friday afternoon, really. So again, we're going to try and make it as painless as possible and purposeful for you as possible. But we assume that you're here for a reason, which is that you're thinking, or you know that you might be interested in doing some sort of work at developing disability in your organisation or in your HE or wherever. So we're going to ask you what your foundations, why are you here? What do you want to get from this? Because also, we might be able to tailor it a little bit more, because again, it's like shooting in the dark. What is your disability pathway in your establishment? How might you want to change it or develop it further? And who's in your team? Who are those people, those key people? And who are your partners and collaborators? So these are the questions that we asked of ourselves at this. What's the information that we would want to know if we were starting from scratch? And that's kind of where we've started from. So if it's all right to go back one, thank you very much. Again, I suppose we've got to do a little bit of PR for Worcester, because they have got an element of a history with doing inclusive work at the moment. So the first disability module was actually created in 1999. So if you think they've been on this path for quite a while, and I cannot claim to be there then, and the same as the first module, the first staff that were there, which was a team of about 5 people, pioneered the first module, and they thought, I think we're onto something here, there's quite a big interest. So from there, I kind of joined the university at 2012, and I was already working with very forward-thinking members of staff. And they were already sort of laying the foundations that I was lucky enough to step into and said, right, how can I enhance it more? So we launched the first disability coaching it's up there, with disability. That was our degree that we launched the year after the arena opened. I'm not saying on the back of the legacy or not legacy of 2012, but it was kind of like we were just trying to hold on the coattails of that. So we thought it was very apt, and we had a very good cohort for that particular year and subsequent years too. But we knew that there was a need for it, so we thought we'd got a lot of vested interest. So we then have rewritten a number of modules, and I'm going to show you and share you those modules today, so you've got an idea of where we have grown it from. But I think it's important to know that we've rewritten, because things change, and people change, and times move on, and so we try to be as current as we possibly can. But I mean, after today, we need to probably go back and rewrite a bunch of stuff again after this last few days. So new projects for us. Well, so I should have to say the Worcester Arena was quite a milestone. Pardon? No, these are the netballers actually, but they actually are cheer. I should have put something up for you. I do apologise. But I think, was home with, or is home with Worcester Wolves. Basketball, it was where the first basketball league was for wheelchair basketball. There's now a national training team there from the Women's Elite League, which we're in partnership with Loughborough, east of London, and Cardiff. So there's a number of other networks that we're doing. But the arena was purpose-built with inclusion in mind. So the change rooms were more accessible, more wider, lower facilities, spaces that could be exaggerated to accommodate a team of wheelchair users. Pathways were wider, everywhere was lower as people walked into the building or rolled into the building. And the entrance is really quite striking, but up here it's got the ramp. And I think a lot of people saying about what's beautiful about the University of Worcester is that they don't have to go around the back. You know, a lot of times it says, oh, we can let you in, but you have to go around the back because that's where we can get you in. So the fact that the people that want to use the ramp is at the front of the building, same access for everybody, was really quite popular. So now we're moving on to our next project, which is the International Inclusive Cricket Centre and Education Centre. So we're working with the ECB just to try and encourage as many different disabilities to come and try inclusive cricket. So it's a good couple of years, you know, we've not started building yet, and it's been on the cards for a while, but we're trying to grow our portfolio even more. Also with a health and wellbeing hub, so again we're working alongside midwifery, paramedics, a bunch of other sort of key worker facilities to again support, well, especially what's happened over the last couple of years really. So I'm trying to say that this hasn't happened overnight. It's been a very, very long project, and I think also it's not necessarily the sports teams that are also focusing on disability. We've got 32 other modules across education, physiotherapy, languages, across everywhere that do disability modules. So it's just not a one-hit wonder, which again is something that we've tried to grow as a team. So to again sort of cement our background and our commitment to being better, we wrote a lot of academics, and our head honcho, Nick Oliver, constructed the Worcester Way, which is a bunch of stories, and again, Professor Hayley Fitzgerald contributed to this as well. And there's task cards within it where basically people were talking about their narratives of being involved in sport, how people can do best practice for different sports as well and activities. So that was kind of like our first dip, our first toe in the water. This is something that I collaborated with a number of academic staff and students, particularly disabled students, because I didn't think that university was still doing enough. So alongside the group, we created the Busy Lecturer's Guide, and there are 9 scenarios of what happens if. So you've got a student in your session that happens to be in a wheelchair and the lift is broken, what do you do? Because unfortunately a lot of people just panic and think, well, I just don't know. And rather than actually deal with it, they put their head in the sand. So I kind of did a before scenario, a during scenario, and an after scenario, and then signposted people for additional help so they could grow their knowledge as well. So that's proved to be very, very popular. We've also got the SCIPS, which is a strategic inclusive practice for practitioners. So a number of staff can actually just dip into a website and it tells them, almost like, it sounds terrible, but a fool's guide or a starter's guide as to how that they can inform their teaching. And it's very, very popular among staff. We've also now gone even wider because inclusion, obviously, is more than just disability, as we've spoken about. But we're looking at race, gender, sexuality, age, and that inclusion document actually allows that to happen. So again, it's what other schools can do to improve their practice. And this one is very close to my heart in particular because I've received a really very, very surprising positive review about it from YST. So this is a book that I helped write with a number of staff in the PE department, and it's for practitioners by practitioners. And it's the kind of book that I wish I'd had when I first started out as a teacher. And it's kind of like a quick flick guide to try and find out what happens if you have a student that can't, I'm actually forgetting the terms that I use, but I use particular terms to avoid medical models. So I didn't want to say a blind student. So it so happens that if you've got a student in your class that can't see particularly well with glasses or without glasses. So I changed the language and yeah, it's out there, and I think I've built on the inclusion spectrum, which I thank Ken Black and Pam Stevens for, but we've now sort of lengthened it with the IPP, so it's the inclusive planning process. So I don't see the inclusion spectrum in isolation. It's about what we can do to say what you need to do before you even approach the inclusion spectrum. How do you talk to your students or your children in your school that might have impairments? What's the knock-on effect to how that works? And it's a whole process that you go through. So that sounds like a plug down, doesn't it? So we'll move on. So again, Friday, we want to hear a bit from you again, and it's not about putting any of you on the spot, but we want to know why you're here, what you want to get out of it. So I did allude to this at the beginning. So it might be, I don't want to be like, what do you want to have a chat on your table, and then it might be, yeah, okay, that's what I'm here for, or I don't know nothing, I'm just here because the view's good. And I'm talking about that view, all right? Well, sorry, Emma. Sorry, Emma. Yeah, well,
I think it's also working specifically with the idea of working with higher education and how we can get evidence bases for our independent job roles and businesses, and how we can connect with higher education services to get that sorted.
And again, with that, it's key as well for us to have those partners too, which I'll allude to again. Sorry.
Sorry, Fiona mentioned as well about how she, like obviously wants to know how our organisation can help, other people, whether it's disabled people, or
Yes.
other populations, but we know that obviously, says that it's probably, as a particular interest in disabled people as well as, the people who she coaches.
Yeah, spot on. Thank you very much.
And I can follow up on
Inspiration, ideas, improvement.
That's
constantly improving.
We never said that.
As I said, Nick, very similar looks at the book, and selfishly it's how can we make right actions accessible to more coaches so that more coaches are competent to be able to work with participants that show up at their door, not push them away.
Yeah, no, but again, it was very much our mantra as well. So thank you, thank you. Reasons why you're what would you like to get from the workshop? Just to you then.
I think it's interesting to see all the different things that are going on out there and all the different pockets of work on all the different provision. So I know it's very, from a personal point of view, there's no set career pathway if they're in sports development or whatever. So yeah, it's just really interesting to see where the good pockets of work are and then how does that work together, how does that connect, how do we use that information, collaborate, not reinvent the wheel. Because I personally feel like there's a lot of good information, a lot of good pockets of work happening, but actually how do we draw that in collectively and work together? And
If only it were that simple, wasn't it? Wouldn't it be if we could all listen to each other, work together, and no egos? It would be amazing, wouldn't it? But that's not what we're about today.
All about Eagles today.
Yeah, we will. So thank you. That's given us some confidence in thinking that, yeah, we're not too far away from the mark from what we potentially could have expected. So if it's all right to click on Emma. This was the degree that we started that was the sports coaching with disability. And we have continued this pathway, and it's bespoke. So a number of students have been attracted to this because it has got disability in the title. They said if it was sports coaching, they're thinking, didn't mean me. So a lot of the disabled students that came on board sort of said, well, no, I have an affinity here. I see myself here. You mean me. And we kind of, because we've toyed with the idea, do we keep it in, do we keep it out? But this was kind of like a very positive move for us as a university, because we still think, and I've not done a proper Google search, if we're still the only one that's got the bespoke degree with disability. But what, I'm not saying anything, I've got away with it.
I think you are.
Well, thank you very much. Because you know what? You do the Google search and you think, have you done it right? so
Google's biased as well.
Sorry?
Google's biased to your
Yes.
computer.
So what the strength of this particular degree is, and I'm afraid we have actually got a student that was on this pathway, and I'm not going to necessarily put you on the spot, Max, but this actually has evolved from the feedback that we got from a number of our students, because we have an education department. So when you were talking about collaborative work, rather than staying in our school, I just knocked on someone's office and said, you don't know the assembly staff, special education, reason, inclusion. I said, can we share some of our modules? He said, you know, we've got a load of students that are really interested in sport. And we were like, well, hello. So from there, all of a sudden, we've grown our knowledge, because we know a bit, but we don't know a lot. And some of the other professionals that have got PhDs in particular issues, all of a sudden, became accessible to our students. So that was a real strength for the students, just to be able to then transfer those educational aspirations and expectations into a sporting context. But we also align the students with mainstream sport. And the disabled students particularly like it because he says, I like being a problem in the mainstream environment because I'm having to force non-disabled people to think about it. And it's kind of nice. And do you know what, for that reason I was like, yes, we want to disrupt people's learning and their comfortability, if that is such a word, because that's how I think we can initiate change. So alongside bespoke disability modules, there's an element of mainstream. There's performance analysis, an area that I think we can very much grow because we've got a number of athletes that again are students that are very particular about we want to go into performance. So again, are we giving them the tools to be able to do that? So that is something we've dipped our toe in and we'll continue to try and do. And again, we're looking at the teaching and the beauty and the art of coaching as well. And a number of our students have gone on to national governing bodies. So we've had someone down in willpower, we've had someone in blind sport, goal, table cricket, and we're thinking, yes, we are beginning to filter. But we also want people to go into schools, which is what we're going to come on to.
Can I just question, are they disabled people who've gone into those national governing bodies, or are they non-disabled students?
Both.
Okay, yeah, well done.
Yeah, both. But we've also introduced you to some of our students, so I'll shut up for a minute.
Okay. Hi, my name's Archie and I'm in the second year of sports coaching with disability sports. I really got into disability sport initially as I am disabled and I want to teach and coach others with similar and also different impairments, and I think sport's a really good way to bring that across to people. The course at Worcester here is very good for disability sport, and the way all the lecturers have been able to integrate disability sport into non-disability sport module, and particularly for those with limited knowledge, prior knowledge of disability disability sport, it's been really useful to see how people can integrate disability sports into the mainstream environment and to try and build up a community of people with disabilities like myself, and also to see how willing able-bodied people are to accept disability as a separate but also inclusive sport.
So Archie's talking about a 3-year degree. So now we're going to move on to the undergrads on sports coaching and initiative training, but teacher training. So these are modules. So at level 4, these students have to do this module. And this was one of the first ones that we started with. And again, it's about the fundamentals of sport. So the fundamentals of inclusion. So again, the old favourites there of inclusion, spectrum and STEP, and it's still shocking how many people have not still been exposed with the amount of training that goes on and what knowledge is out there. I'm still quite surprised that students don't know about that. But we also look at the basic models of disability. Again, some students are still got quite a lot of stigma attached to their learning of we don't know what to do, we don't know what to say. So we get I keep saying children, I don't know why. The students to actually talk to each other and ask and say it's okay to ask. It's important how you ask, but talk to people. And if you get shot down, think about how you framed it. So we get them to question themselves a little bit more. There's quite a lot of practical application, so we do a lot of specific disability sport, which again, we don't want it to be tokenism. We want it to have a purpose. But we want people to have a taster of it, to say, right, we want to try and grab them because we've got an option in the year 2 to do either a teaching disability module or a coaching. So we're trying to grab them and hook them. And then we have guest speakers. So the first year it tends to be Kath Parvin, who does a lot of work with dyspraxia, and we talk about the value that if you can not diagnose, we don't encourage our students to diagnose, but if you can spot a child that is really struggling with basic motor skills, there may be a reason rather than thinking they're naughty or they're disruptive. So we're trying to get people away from that mindset of the child being the problem. And I've got 2 students to talk to you now.
Hi everyone, my name is Jack Austin, so I'm a 2nd year PE and sports coaching science student here at the University of Worcester.
And I'm Erin Cameron, and I'm also on PE and sports coaching science and also a 2nd year student.
Fantastic. So I just want to talk to you a bit about today, about the 1st year disability module that we did as part of our course. So for this module we had a real focus on inclusion and adapted physical activity, both in PE and coaching. And what it really taught me was about the different perspectives and different, methods we can use within our teaching and coaching to help benefit and make an more inclusive practice. So one of the models we came across was a STEP model and how we can actually differentiate activities to ensure that everyone's included. So that was a real eye-opener for me. But I think the biggest thing that I really learned in that module was just the amount of barriers that are present and you're not aware of for those that perhaps aren't able-bodied or perhaps are suffering with a disability, that they cannot access physical activity. And so it's really made me, both as a practitioner, but also to promote, to remove these barriers and making it as accessible as possible going forward. So that's what I really benefited from.
That's a learning.
I think in terms of me, what I really benefited from was in the practical elements, was finding out that there's actually quite a lot of disability sports that can be inclusive for able-bodied participants. I think for us in our module, it made us realise that anyone can really be involved in anything, and it's not just for those disabled participants. And I think that made my self-awareness increase a lot more. And I think we played a lot of games like inclusive zone basketball, so we got used to using the wheelchairs, etc., which was a really good experience, and we actually experienced some of the barriers that Jack was on about.
Oh, Jack, you're doing so.
I agree, but you know what? I left it in because it's a reality. So we're saying we're trying to talk about promoting and growing knowledge, and he's grabbed some things, but he's not grabbed everything. But it's a starting point. So I thought, you know, shall I leave it in? And I did, because it's real, isn't
Can I
it?
can I just be devil's advocate?
Of course.
So I have CP and I have disability, so that's one of the things I could pick on. But then we're also not to say that somebody doesn't suffer in some way because of an impairment. So I'm just going to throw that out there, because it might be medical, it might be pain. Do you know what I'm saying? So I pick that up as much, and I would pick it up with people. Usually in the How to Coach Disabled People workshop, the terminology is key, but actually we don't make assumptions, you know, it's how we use that terminology, we don't make assumptions. And what we mustn't do is make people scared of saying the wrong thing, because we know in society people are so scared of saying the wrong thing. There's actually a piece of scope research I didn't realise in 2015 called, is it hashtag End the Awkwardness? 25% of the population, the scopes from their research was so scared of saying the wrong thing that they actually would rather not talk to the disabled person than say the wrong thing. And from a coaching perspective, or a physical activity, we're in big trouble if somebody doesn't want to talk to somebody because they're scared to say the wrong thing. So I'm like, bring it, say the wrong thing every day, and we'll have a conversation about it. We'll put views forward. My view as a disabled person is my view, but it might be the right view, it might be, you know, do you know what I mean? But we've got to have conversations about it, not shoot people down.
We do, and I kind of, I'll come to you in a second, that's right. And I totally get that, and again, that's the dialogue of, you know, when I replay this back, and he's going to be doing the second year module, he'll remember that, and he'll think, oh, because he doesn't know the connotations of it, but it's about that education. But I do take that it can also be offensive.
I just want to say back on what you said, really. You mentioned, obviously, people are, you know, being scared to say the wrong thing. Well, isn't that where we should educate them and say, actually, okay, you don't call someone disabled, you call them different. Okay, they've, you know, got this condition, whatever they've got, but ultimately they're, you know, they're still a, you know, normal person. If you go up and, you know, Ali's just a normal athlete, he's done, you know, so he's done everything.
I used to love it when the young kids come up to me and go, what's wrong with you? Why is your legs like that? And I'm like, well, because I talked to you about it, because I've got cerebral palsy, because I have a conversation about what it means, and do you know what I mean? But I can have that conversation, so I know that they then go away and they see somebody else, and they're thinking, and sometimes you just need to have a conversation.
Yeah, you do. You don't want that,
understand.
don't say it.
That's
the
something
opposite.
that you haven't experienced.
On the flip side of that, I've been on training courses with Esther when we used to work together at Sports Coach UK, and some of our colleagues haven't realised that you had CP, and then went, oh, throw you a ball, and you're going, no, don't do that to me. So there's all that as well, and that's professionals who've been coaching for a long time. Mark did it to you, didn't he, in one of the workshops, remember?
In fairness, there was a few people who've not got disability, catch a ball either, so like, inevitable, I've been in the room.
Yeah, I mean, you don't start an activity with a tennis ball when you don't know a group of people.
Especially when it's over. Okay, so thank you for that dialogue. So moving on to level 5. So again, now we hope that we've hooked the students in. They've been forced because we think it's valuable for them to have that. Now they've got the option. And more often than not, the students either choose the sport and disability or the teaching at SEN in PE. So through here, we look at the deeper models of disability because they touch on them. But again, a lot of knowledge sometimes can be superficial for students. So we do revisit, but we look at the national curriculum and we can see here all of the different topics that we look at, and that's some of them. And I know Nigel was here from Door Sports, but Tom Mills comes in and he talks and does a practical with the students, which they love, because again, it's not non-disabled people talking about disability. We try to get as many disabled representations of people to talk about the conditions, because, well, not their conditions, but their lived experiences, and that's really quite important for us. And Dave does that also with the blind football in particular. So again, the university was saying, no, we're going to put you together. You just do one second year module. And we're saying, no, they're completely different beasts. So they listen to us and they welcome that. But rather than me going through these, I know of time again, if you want to play Emma, And Emma?
And action.
Hi, I'm Emma Collins. I'm a third year student studying sports coaching science and disability sport. On the second year SEN PE teaching module, we learnt lots about how society perceives disability and how that has an influence on us as teachers and coaches in our sessions. We learnt a lot about different languages that should be used and different languages that maybe shouldn't be used, and how we feel about it, and how that has an influence on our coaching and our teaching. We also looked a little bit about policy and the legislation, so things like the Equality Act and how that has an influence on what we do. And we also had the opportunity to teach an online session because of COVID to a SEN school, which was a really invaluable experience. So yeah.
Okay.
Hi, this is Andrea from the University of Worcester. I'm here to talk about the sports and disability coaching module from the second year. I really like the blended approach between theory and practical. I think it works quite well personally, and it improved my knowledge of coaching to people with disability, whatever the disability may be. It's not restricted to just different areas of disabilities, but it's very wide, and I think I improved my skills in coaching people with disability. Another thing I really enjoyed as well is links to the NGBs and coaching opportunities, coaching jobs or volunteering, and lectures are very helpful and guide you to different opportunities that this is the way that you want to improve as a coach. Thank you.
I want to unpick this role, but again, I want Emma to have her 5 minutes of fame as well, 15 minutes of fame. So we go on to the third year module, which brings everyone back together again. So we're looking more at contemporary issues. So it's more of an umbrella session. But again, we're going even deeper into the models of disability, and we challenge people about ableist views, disablism, etc. And again, and this is quite important as well, because a lot of non-disabled people think it's really quite rosy. So the fact that we look at the dark side of disability, about mental health, we look at boosting, we look at cheating, a bunch of other stuff, to just sort of say, well, that there are some very controversial actions that could be taken part. But over to Suf, if that's all right.
So hi, I'm Sophia McAnuff, and I'm currently doing a third year disability sport module at the University of Worcester. I found that this module has helped me understand disability sports in greater depth, and it's helped me understand from an ableist perspective the difference in disability sport and how we can access them, and that you don't have to have a disability necessarily to engage in disability sports and to teach it. I found that the module has also helped me understand ways in which we can access those sports and the potential barriers that are preventing access to these sports. There are different models of disability, and kind of understanding them in greater depth has kind of exposed me to what I didn't know before, and I think this module will help me in the future when it comes to teaching potentially, and the path that I can take in terms of disability sport and not just mainstream sports. So thank you very much.
Always that awkward. How do you finish it? So I'm going to pipe down now, because you're now going to go on to the Masters. So again, we're going up another level.
Yes. Thanks, Bex. So I joined Worcester last year, really as the kind of, first year of this, this kind of trailblazing Masters in adaptive sports, and we kind of discussed whether adaptive sport is the right name for it, and I don't think it is, because it's not about sport, it's not about adapting, it's about inclusion, it's about physical activity across the spectrum, from play all the way up to elite sport, whatever our students are interested in pursuing. So we just finished our first year, our kind of first cohort of students got their results this week, and I'm going to embarrass Max because he got a distinction in his Masters. A fantastic prior preparation was always a fantastic student to have as well. So within the MSc Adaptive Sport, we really are, wanting to problematise thinking, We want to, kind of expose students to a wider range of disability, sure, but also kind of sociological understandings about why people in society might think a certain way, the history of disability, why it's perceived in certain ways, and kind of really trying to help them have the tools that they need as practitioners, whatever practitioner they want to become, to have discussions, to have discourse, to have conversations that are really difficult if you don't have that language. So the first thing that we really kind of try to do is kind of help them think, not really what you think, but why do other people think the way that they do? So we all start with a sociological imagination. So, and I think that's been so wonderful, particularly within a para-coach network, that we've got elite disability sports who I absolutely admire, and we're like screaming out on the TV, kind of like a couple of months ago, as well as, myself, I'm more about inclusion, particularly within leisure centres and gyms, and like we can be a little bit kind of disconnected. We can be a bit almost like there's this tiny pot of funding. I'm going to fight, for this so that the elite Olympians can't, the elite Paralympians can't get it. Or the Paralympians, need this funding more than as a booster. But and it's kind of a bit like, well, no, we should be working together. And so we always teach this sociological imagination first to basically kind of say, people aren't wrong. They just have different backgrounds, and they have different understandings about things. They have different cultures. We were so excited that we have our first Kenyan student, and his contributions have been amazing and taught us so much about different cultures. And from there, we kind of decide to kind of make them very overwhelmed with lots of theories, such as Bourdieu and Foucault, Goffman. I love Pedagogy of the Oppressed by Freire, so I was trying to put that in as well. And really talking about ableism and go very in depth about models beyond medical and social. We've got a social relational, human rights model, supercrip, inspiration point, born as much as kind of really trying to encompass as much about disability sport within our society as possible to really help deconstruct and really help them to kind of see the why and the how, not just the what of disability sports. And my favourite one, problematizing the Paralympics, particularly when I'm asked to do it to undergrads who think everything is rosy and inspirational, and then I just destroy that for them. I don't think they like me very much. So really that's the first semester. We really go very theory heavy because our intention in the second module, this applied pedagogy, is to say, right, you've got the theory, you understand, you might have an appreciation of Bourdieu, appreciation of stigma and Goffman. Let's put that into practice. Where do you see that? How can we dismantle that? How can we use this to help inform your practice? And so, of course, we have the inclusion spectrum. We're so lucky that we've had phenomenal guest speakers to come and share their expertise, and our students have I think Max will agree, really, really benefited from not just, the same voices every single week with very similar views, but, people from different aspects. Talk about different frameworks, different learning theories, particularly those that want to perhaps go on to become teachers, and just general journey through APA, and really kind of asking this question. We talk about individual needs, individualized programs, but can there be such a thing as applied practice to cater for individual needs, as well as be, kind of socially just, as well as, try to be, kind of allies to the disability movement, and so again, it's almost not trying to wanting to build confidence and reaffirm people's practice, but also to really problematize that there is no right way to do it, and we don't have a right way to do it. We're making mistakes. To not be afraid about making mistakes, because if you make mistakes, then at least you're trying, and then you can remedy that mistake to hopefully make a better practice. And as Beck says, from these last 2 days, we're going to have to go back and make some changes ourselves, which has been so wonderful for us. So effectively, that's the kind of purpose of this very new adapted sport, but more importantly, if we go to the next, or the YouTube thing, there we go.
We'll quickly play that.
Yeah, please.
Hi, I'm Max Andrews, the course representative for the Adapted Sport Masters. After studying sports coaching science with disability sport at undergraduate level, I fell in love with adapted and disability sport and wanted to expand my knowledge within the field. I saw the Adapted Sport Masters as a brilliant opportunity to do so. The course itself is incredibly thought-provoking, providing content that I'd never even considered before, and it stretches my ability to understand the complex nature that is adapted sport. The cohort that I work alongside are great, and they absolutely love the content delivery, and that is all thanks to the incredible staff that are on the Adapted Sport Masters. They're incredibly personable in how they help us achieve our goals and how they break down certain concepts that enable us to understand the adapted sport landscape. I do not hesitate for anyone to look further into the adapted sport if they are interested in and around that area.
Brilliant, and I won't go through this so much because I know we are short in time, but the most important thing for us really is that we get more informed practitioners from our degree pathway. And what I really love is that, again, these are two of our students that really the last couple of weeks emailed us. I promise I didn't, kind of say really good things about the course. But just two very, very, very different kind of journeys that these two have gone on. And two equally as important journeys. So we've got Serena, who was really focusing on adventure sports, adventure therapy, and her right now she's trying to design her own adventure therapy kind of course to work with Eco Peace Middle East, working with Jordanians, Israelis, and Palestinians, which is just so cool. And then we've also got Adam, equally as important in his journey, and he's very, very excited that he's got his first proper job in inclusive sports as a graduate assistant at Rector Prep. Both equally as important, but so different. And what's so exciting for Bex and I when we see, our students following their own path and having this kind of wide impact within inclusive sport. And this is mainly for that we didn't really kind of throw a lot of theory at them just to kind of say, look how smart we are, and that sort of thing. This is from one of our students who is a phenomenal practitioner, but his kind of perceptions hadn't really been challenged. And the first time we spoke about ableism, for him, he suddenly thought, oh, I'm proper going to blitz this because I know everything. Then as soon as you said ableism, everything went out the window. So something like that, one concept can disrupt someone's thinking, and that's so powerful. So again, we only touch on things like Bourdieu and Foucault and Goffman, because we hope that, this student in particular, ableism struck for him. So he could go, and he had the tools to then go deeper and deeper and deeper into what ableism is, where ableism was in his practice, how to challenge it. So that was our kind of purpose, to focus on kind of the surface level of different theorists to, again, be as inclusive as possible for people, the different applied theories that might help people's practice more. So, I don't know what time we've got. No. Sorry.
We're over like in 40 minutes.
Okay, well, we'll do that in a little bit, but what I really want to emphasise is that Bex and I are not the only ones that do it. We were the ones that were lucky enough to be, invited here to talk. But if we go into the next slide, we have a whole team all the way from, our Vice Chancellor, and Bex had a go at me for putting myself at the bottom, but that's where I go. But we kind of talk about policy, and Ali before was talking about wanting to go at the very, very top. And we are so lucky, and we acknowledge that we're so lucky. We have great facilities, we have the history of the foundations, and that's something that has been built for decades now. But we're really, really, really lucky that we have all these people, from the Vice Chancellor, to heads of school, to professors, to lecturers, to postdocs and PhD students that get it and are invested. I have some of my lectures turn into rants, funny enough, and I talk about rants about disability policy. And the issue with policy, and I think most things in particular, is that at any of these levels, if that stops, then it doesn't carry on. And so we are so lucky that we have a team that is, driving for the same goal, singing from the same hymn sheet, if that's the correct analogy. And it's not just Bex and I. We have people that are sports psychologists, we have sociologists, we have practitioners, we have performance analysis. So we're so lucky that we have the team behind us. So I think that's the most important thing for us to say, is that it's not just the two of us. And we're lucky.
Who's your team as well?
Can I just add something into there that people might not know, but it's not just them saying this, because the system in UK education means that they've got to have an external examiner I'm very lucky that I work with John Moores, but I'm also the external examiner on the disability sports coaching course. So I can absolutely say that what happens here is excellent practice.
Thanks, Gus.
That's it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So yeah, who's in your team? Who are your cheerleaders? Who's going to support you with that? You know, who's going to be that head sponsor, Ali? You know, who's going to be that person that's going to be that person for you? Sorry.
Yeah, and again, we don't work alone. Rick, you just signed yourself up for it as a guest speaker, so thank you very much.
Yes.
We have fantastic collaborations with external communities. You heard
They gave me a piece of paper.
You heard our students talk about volunteering opportunities. We have coaching, and teaching in schools and stuff. So we have phenomenal, collaborations that we've built over the years that have changed, with Activity Alliance. Worcester Susan is a fantastic organisation, Disability Sport Worcester, to individual clubs such as the Warriors Foundation, Worcester Wills, now ECB, to New College Worcester, fantastic school for the I don't know if that's the right terminology. Again, we can have a discussion about it because I want to be informed and educated.
Yeah.
And then we have, amazing individual practitioners and guest speakers that come in and share their, perceptions, their experiences, and are so open to students, doing placements there, asking them questions, sharing, again, just widening this disability community that we know is out there, but it's just not connected. And so that's what, it's so wonderful to be part of this here. We have, Mark Bullock, who's, inclusive sports, but again, helped me within my inclusive exercise journey. So we have, trust foundations, community clubs. We can't do this in isolation, and so being able to actually spread and actually, have impact on a wider scale, whatever impact that might be, it requires a lot of these community collaborative partners that we're very, very grateful to have. Yeah. Oh yeah, and Ella is also an absolute legend.
She's an ex-student.
And an ex-student, yes. A legendary ex-student. There we go.
Did you see her with Michael Portillo?
Yes. Yes. I mean,
Right.
yeah, she has. I mean, the fact she's worked on Rising Phoenix. There's a number of things she's been our guest lecture, Aurora, and she was actually a student did a study on her and her journey through the online stuff. So again,
So that's again, we're just kind of sharing. We are not the way. We don't want to be the only way, not in any way, shape, or form. But it's going to be so specific and so contextualised to whatever you want to do. So again, it's just kind of asking what your foundations are, who is in your team, and who are your collaborative partners. And then, what are the next steps that we can do to, make Worcester kind of not the only one? As much as we enjoy having people talk to us about disability, we want to have, we want competition. We want more and more people to have higher education for disability, so that for us not to have basically to be out of a job and not be asked here because disability is just, it's just naturally part of a curriculum and not something that, has to be really, really thought of and integrated and that's anyway.
It's the only way that we can feel so we can make an impact and change. We can't necessarily do it through policy, but we can do it through a mindset. So that's where the initial teacher training for me comes in, because I know that I can't operate at the political level. So it's just small little steps, hopefully. But we have here a free gift, which is a pen. And there's also a little handout about the Masters, because we only spoke about 2 of the disability modules, but it also goes alongside leaders in sport project placement, etc. We whistle-stop that, and I'm sorry I didn't give you enough time.
It's the same every Thursday, don't worry.
Is that okay? Yeah. I'm so sorry. You changed. Sorry.
Yeah, that was wonderful. Thank you.
Tell them about the Disability Network as well, your research network.
Oh gosh, yeah. The Disability Yozo.
Oh, yeah. We also have teaching and practice is fantastic at Worcester, and I was really very fortunate to be asked to kind of come on as the role to really, as people would ask what I do, and I just kind of say, I'm a super nerd. I love the reading, I love the writing, and so we have a research group called the Inclusive Sport and Physical Activity Research Group, where we have a range of Professor Joseph Molnar, myself and other professors and PhD students and any student that is interested in disability research. And so we're basically pushing our kind of research agenda forward. We've written quite a few things about language, particularly for PE teachers, and mainly that fear is, you know, kind of it's that first initial contact really, because once you know their name, really it's just like, oh, Daryl, oh, Jen, but it's that first kind of like relationship. So yeah, so we're hopeful to you know, kind of continue sharing what we do at Worcester, sharing our general kind of practice, our mindset about disability, and also kind of translating that more from the higher echelons of Google Scholar to, you know, more kind of understandable sort of thing. Is that what you wanted me to say, Liz? Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah, you was doing.
So we've got about 5 minutes, I think, to transition.
Yeah, transition.
You're all right, you're okay. To transition back down into the main room for the, is that the last session? Final session. Final session.